Story 1: The Shadow at the Window. In the heart of rural America, where amber fields stretched endlessly under a vast, cerulean sky, lay the sleepy town of Willow Creek. Its high school, a modest brick building nestled among ancient oaks, was home to fewer than 200 seniors in the class of 2008. Unlike the sprawling suburban schools with their cliques and chaos, Willow Creek High was intimate. You didn't just know your classmates' names. You knew their quirks, their dreams, and the way their eyes lit up or dimmed in the fluorescent hallways. For 17-year-old Ethan Caldwell, this familiarity was both a comfort and a cage. Life in Willow Creek was predictable, uneventful. Kids spent their afternoons tossing footballs in dusty lots or racing bikes down gravel roads. The kind of wholesome existence that felt ripped from a Norman Rockwell painting. But beneath the surface of this idyllic town, something darker was brewing. A storm that would leave Ethan forever changed. Ethan remembered the day it all began with crystalline clarity. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the air thick with the scent of fallen leaves. He was in his junior year computer class, a relic of early 2000s technology with bulky CRT monitors humming softly in a dimly lit room. The classroom was a patchwork of students from all grades, their chatter a low buzz as they worked on rudimentary coding assignments. Ethan sat in the third row, stealing glances at his crush, Sarah, who was giggling with her friends across the aisle. But his attention kept drifting to a lone figure in the second row, tucked against the far wall. Luke Harper. Luke was an enigma. He wasn't unattractive. His features were sharp, almost handsome, with dark hair that fell into his eyes. But he carried an aura of solitude that made him untouchable. He spoke so rarely that when he did, it felt like an event. Ethan had seen him smile once, a fleeting thing, when a freshman had complimented his sketchbook in art class. But mostly, Luke was a ghost, drifting through the halls with his head down, his presence barely registering. Ethan had always felt a pang of guilt for not reaching out. But in a school where everyone knew everyone, Luke's silence felt like a choice. That semester, however, Luke became a target. It started subtly. A group of seniors, led by a cocky jock named Tyler, began whispering about him during computer class. "Guy's so quiet, it's creepy," Tyler would mutter, loud enough for Luke to hear. The others would snicker, egging him on. Soon the whispers turned to taunts. They'd mock Luke's silence when the teacher called on him, their laughter sharp and cutting. Ethan watched it unfold, his stomach twisting. The teacher, Mr. Grayson, was a spineless man who avoided conflict like it was a disease. He'd pretend not to notice the crumpled paper balls sailing toward Luke's head, or the way Tyler accidentally bumped his chair. Ethan wanted to intervene, but fear of becoming a target himself kept him silent. He hated himself for it. One day, as Ethan walked to his car after school, he spotted Luke sitting on a curb near the parking lot, his backpack slung carelessly beside him. The sight was jarring. Luke Warnartish, who always seemed to vanish after the bell, looked small and defeated. Ethan hesitated, then approached. "Hey man, you okay?" he asked, his voice tentative. Luke's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan offered him a ride home. The 10-minute drive was a revelation. Luke, it turned out, wasn't mute by choice. He spoke softly, deliberately, about his love for graphic novels and his dream of escaping Willow Creek. He confessed that the seniors' taunts weren't isolated. Other classes were just as cruel, chipping away at him like waves against a cliff. Ethan tried to reassure him, dismissing the seniors as losers who will peak in high school. Luke's lips twitched into a half smile, but his eyes remained haunted. When Ethan dropped him off, he realized they lived just a few streets apart. "See you tomorrow," Ethan called, and Luke nodded, a flicker of warmth in his expression. After that, they exchanged nods in class, a silent acknowledgement of their brief connection. But Ethan's guilt lingered. He still didn't stand up for Luke when the seniors escalated their cruelty, tossing pens at him or mimicking his silence with exaggerated whispers. Then one fateful Friday, Luke didn't show up to computer class. Ethan noticed his empty seat but thought little of it. Maybe he was sick. The day dragged on until 7th period, when the loudspeaker crackled to life. "Lockdown, this is not a drill." The words hit like a thunderclap. Ethan's English teacher, Mrs. Larson, froze, her face draining of color. The class exchanged nervous glances as she rushed to lock the door and flip off the lights. "Everyone, to the corner," she whispered, her voice trembling. The students huddled together, the air thick with fear. Ethan's heart pounded as he crouched beside his classmates, the room shrouded in darkness. Minutes stretched into eternity, each sound magnified, the creak of a floorboard, the distant wail of sirens. Then the principal's voice returned, strained and urgent. An individual in a mask with a black duffel bag was seen attempting to enter the school. "All doors are secured. Remain in lockdown." Ethan's mind raced. A masked intruder? In Willow Creek? The town hadn't seen a crime worse than a stolen tractor in decades. The lockdown lasted nearly an hour, the tension suffocating. When it finally lifted, police swarmed the campus, their radios crackling. The school day was canceled, and Ethan drove a few friends to his house, their chatter a mix of fear and morbid curiosity. That night he lay awake, replaying the day's events. The lockdown felt like a bad dream, but the real nightmare was yet to come. At 2 a.m., a soft tapping at his window jolted him awake. Ethan's room was on the ground floor, and the sound sent ice through his veins. He crept to the window, peering through the blinds. A figure stood outside, shrouded in shadow. His pulse spiked, but then he heard a familiar voice. "Ethan, it's Luke." Relief battled with dread as Ethan cracked the window. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed. Luke's face was pale, his eyes wild. "I did something bad," he whispered. "Through the window, I tried to do something terrible." The words hit Ethan like a freight train. "Was it you?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "The lockdown. Was that you?" Luke nodded, his expression a mix of shame and desperation. "I didn't go through with it. I couldn't. But I had a gun, Ethan. I was so angry. I just wanted them to feel what I felt." Ethan's mind reeled. Luke, the quiet kid who sketched superheroes, had planned something unthinkable. He wanted to let him in, to understand, but fear rooted him to the spot. "You need to turn yourself in," Ethan said, his voice shaking. Luke pleaded to talk, but when he lingered, Ethan shouted for his dad. Luke bolted into the night. Ethan's parents called the police, and by morning, Luke was in custody. He'd confessed to bringing a gun to school, intending to scare his tormentors, but claimed he'd lost his nerve. Charged with making a terroristic threat, he faced juvenile detention. Ethan never saw him again, but the incident left a scar. He wrestled with guilt. Had his small act of kindness pushed Luke to confide in him, or could he have done more to stop the spiral? Willow Creek, once a haven, now felt fragile, its innocence shattered by the boy who'd nearly broken it. Story 2. The Clown in the Shadows. In the fall of 2016, a strange hysteria gripped the nation. Reports of sinister clowns lurking in alleys and forests flooded the news, a phenomenon dismissed by adults as a prank, but terrifying to children. For 11-year-old Mia Thompson, a fifth grader in the quiet suburb of Maplewood, New Jersey, the clown sightings were the stuff of nightmares. Her elementary school, a cheerful red brick building surrounded by manicured lawns, felt like a safe haven, until the day it wasn't. It was a crisp October afternoon, the kind where the sun cast long shadows and the air smelled of apples and wood smoke. Mia was in Mrs. Riker's class, hunched over a math worksheet, the room hushed except for the scratch of pencils. The windows along the far wall offered a view of the playground, where younger kids laughed during recess. Mia glanced up, her gaze drifting outside, when a classmate's shrill voice shattered the silence. "There's a clown out there!" Heads snapped toward the windows. Mia's heart skipped as she saw him, a figure in a tattered red and yellow clown suit, his face smeared with white paint, black rings circling his eyes. He stood just beyond the playground, his grin unnaturally wide, his eyes locked on the classroom. The sight was grotesque, like something from a horror movie. He raised a gloved hand and waved, slow and deliberate, his gaze never wavering. Some kids giggled, thinking it was a joke, but others shrank back, their faces pale. Mrs. Riker, a no-nonsense teacher with a penchant for order, strode to the window. "Excuse me," she shouted through the glass, her voice sharp. "Classes are in session. Leave now." The clown didn't flinch. His waving continued, mechanical and eerie, as if he were taunting her. Mia's stomach churned. This wasn't a prank. It felt wrong, predatory. Mrs. Riker's expression hardened. She ordered the class to sit, then grabbed the classroom phone and stepped into the hall, her voice low but urgent. When she returned, she yanked the blinds shut, blocking out the clown's leering face. "Stay calm," she said, but her trembling hands betrayed her. Minutes later, the principal's voice boomed over the intercom. "Staff, initiate lockdown procedures immediately." The room erupted into controlled chaos. Mrs. Riker flipped off the lights and herded the students under their desks, her commands clipped. Mia crouched beside her friend Lily, their knees pressed together, the darkness amplifying every sound. The lockdown stretched on, each minute heavy with dread. Mia's mind raced with images of the clown, his painted face, his slow wave, the way he seemed to see her. Whispers rippled through the class, some kids speculating he was just a local teen pulling a stunt, others convinced he was dangerous. After 30 agonizing minutes, the principal announced the lockdown was over. Security had swept the grounds, and the clown was gone. Classes resumed, but the atmosphere was electric with unease. Mia couldn't focus, her eyes darting to the covered windows. When the final bell rang, she joined her friend Chris to walk home, their neighborhood a short trek through tree-lined streets. They were halfway there when two girls from their grade sprinted past, their faces ashen. "There's someone in the woods," one gasped. Mia and Chris froze, turning toward the small patch of trees behind the school, a thin buffer between the campus and a quiet road. There, partially obscured by branches, was the clown. His dirty costume was unmistakable, his painted face glowing in the dusk. He was waving again, but this time, his gesture was aimed at the girls, a slow, beckoning motion that sent chills down Mia's spine. It wasn't playful, it was sinister, like a predator luring prey. "Run!" Chris whispered, grabbing Mia's arm. They bolted, their sneakers pounding the pavement, not stopping until they reached Mia's house. Gasping for breath, Mia spilled the story to her parents, who immediately called the school. The police were notified and patrols scoured the area, but the clown had vanished. Days later, rumors swirled. Some said he was a drifter, others a local with a twisted sense of humor. The school sent home a vague letter about an unauthorized individual and promised heightened security, but no arrests were made. Mia never saw the clown again, but his image haunted her. She stopped walking home alone, her once carefree afternoons tainted by the memory of that painted face. The clown sightings faded from the news, but for Mia, Maplewood was no longer a sanctuary. Somewhere out there, a man in a tattered costume had watched her, waited, and disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind a fear that lingered long after the circus left town. Story 3. The Ghost of a Killer. On the outskirts of Philadelphia, where the city's hustle faded into quiet fields and winding roads, Sarah Mitchell lived a life shaped by loss and duty. A middle school math teacher, she was a pillar of her small community, known for her warmth and unshakable resolve. But her home was more than a refuge. It was a sanctuary for her son, Jacob, and her stepdaughter, Emily, the daughter of her late best friend, Joanne. In 2016, Joanne's brutal murder at the hands of her husband, a serial killer who'd claimed 6 lives, had shattered Sarah's world. She'd taken Emily in, adopting her legally, determined to give the girl a chance at a normal life. But on March 30th, 2020, as the world grappled with the early days of a global pandemic, Sarah's carefully rebuilt life faced a threat she could never have imagined. The school where Sarah taught was a remote outpost, surrounded by miles of empty fields and a single gas station 2 miles away. It was one of the last in the county to close for COVID lockdowns, its isolation a false sense of security. That Monday, Sarah was in her classroom, guiding her 6th graders through a lesson on fractions. The room was warm, the air heavy with the promise of spring. Her phone buzzed on her desk, a notification from the school's emergency system. Someone was at the front office to pick up Emily. Sarah's blood ran cold. Emily, now 13, was in a classroom 3 doors down, with no appointments or family nearby. Sarah was her sole guardian, Joanne's relatives lived states away, and Emily's biological father, the monster who'd killed Joanne, was serving 3 life sentences. Sarah texted back, her fingers trembling, "I'm at school." No one is authorized to pick her up. The response was chilling. The person claimed to be Emily's father. Time slowed. Sarah's mind raced, piecing together the impossible. Emily's father was in prison, had been for years. The school had no record of him, only Sarah's custody papers. She called Emily's teacher, demanding she be sent to her classroom immediately. As she hung up, the lockdown siren wailed, a piercing sound that sent her students into a practice drill. "Desks to the door!" Sarah barked, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. The kids scrambled, piling furniture against the entrance, while Sarah pulled the blinds and ushered them into a corner. Emily arrived, her eyes wide with confusion, and Sarah gripped her hand, whispering, "Stay close." The lockdown stretched on, 46 minutes of suffocating silence. Sarah's phone buzzed with updates from the principal. An unidentified man had tried to enter the school, claiming to be Emily's father. Security footage showed a gaunt figure in a hoodie, his face obscured, lingering near the entrance before fleeing. Sarah's gut screamed the truth. This was him, the man who'd haunted her nightmares. But how? He was supposed to be locked away. His crimes, a distant horror. When the lockdown lifted, police escorted Sarah and Emily out, their faces grim. At the station, they revealed the unthinkable. Emily's father had escaped during a prison transfer. A car had crashed into the transport bus, killing 10 inmates and 2 guards, allowing 20 prisoners to flee. He was among them, and he'd come for Emily. Police had staked out Sarah's house, but he never appeared. Instead, he'd targeted the school, slipping through the chaos of the pandemic to reclaim what he'd lost. Sarah and her children were relocated under police protection, their lives upended. Emily, already scarred by her mother's murder, withdrew, haunted by the shadow of a father she barely remembered. Sarah wrestled with rage and fear, questioning how the system had failed so spectacularly. Months later, she learned he'd been recaptured in a neighboring state, but the damage was done. The man who'd torn her world apart had come close to doing it again, and Sarah knew she'd never feel safe again. Not in her school, not in her home, not anywhere. Story 4. The Voice at the Door. In the suburban sprawl of Westfield, Ohio, where cul-de-sacs and soccer fields define the landscape, 14-year-old Noah Carter was a typical freshman at Westfield High. The school was a microcosm of Middle America, cheerleaders, jocks, and the occasional outcast navigating a maze of lockers and hormones. Lockdown drills were routine, a grim necessity in an era of school shootings, but to Noah, they were just another interruption, like a fire alarm or a pep rally. That all changed on a chilly Wednesday in November, during 4th period Earth Science. Noah was slouched in his seat, doodling in the margins of his notebook, when the loudspeaker crackled. "This is a lockdown. Lock all doors, lights off, stay quiet." The announcement was familiar, and the class reacted with the usual mix of groans and giggles. Mrs. Chen, their teacher, locked the door with a sigh and flipped off the lights, directing everyone to the corner farthest from the entrance. Noah joined his classmates, whispering jokes to his friend Matt, assuming it was just another drill. Then came the second announcement, the principal's voice tight with urgency. "This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill." The room fell silent, the air heavy with realization. Mrs. Chen's face, usually calm, was taut with fear. She clutched her phone, her eyes darting to the door. Noah's pulse quickened as distant police sirens pierced the quiet, growing louder with each passing second. The class huddled closer, their breaths shallow, the darkness amplifying every creak and shuffle. Minutes ticked by, each one an eternity. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway, slow, deliberate, not the hurried stride of a teacher or cop. They stopped outside the classroom door. Noah's heart pounded as he stared at the locked handle, willing it to hold. A soft knock followed, 3 measured taps that sent a shiver through the room. No one moved. The handle jiggled, turning back and forth, testing the lock. Then, a man's voice, low and unnervingly calm. "This is just a drill." You can open the door now." Noah's eyes locked on Mrs. Chen. Her finger pressed to her lips. She shook her head, her expression a silent command. "Don't move." The knocking grew louder, more insistent, the voice repeating, "Hello?" It's safe now. The lie was palpable, a predator's lure. Noah's mind raced. Who was this man and why was he here? The science wing was near a side entrance, often left propped open during deliveries. Had someone slipped in? The knocking stopped, replaced by silence so thick it was suffocating. Then a scream tore through the hall, a girl's voice, sharp and fleeting, followed by nothing. Noah's classmate, Emily, stifled a sob, her hand clamped over her mouth. Whispers broke out. Someone swore they saw a shadow pass the door's narrow window. Mrs. Chen hushed them, her eyes never leaving the entrance. Noah's legs ached from crouching, but fear kept him rooted. 10 minutes later, shouts erupted down the hall. Police officers, their voices commanding. The class waited, breathless, until a firm knock came, followed by, "Police! Open the door!" Mrs. Chen hesitated, demanding to see badges through the window. Only then did she unlock the door, revealing 2 officers in tactical gear. They escorted the class out, past other rooms, emptying into the hall, the school a hive of controlled chaos. Outside, cop cars and a SWAT van lined the lot, their lights flashing. Noah glimpsed a man in cuffs, pale, disheveled, maybe 30, being led away, his eyes vacant. Later, the school revealed fragments of the truth. A mentally unstable man had entered through a side door during a delivery, carrying a backpack with unknown contents. No one was hurt, but the incident shook Westfield to its core. Noah couldn't shake the memory of that voice, the slow knocks, the scream. For weeks, he checked the locks at home, his once safe world fractured. Westfield High resumed its routine, but Noah knew nothing would ever feel under control again. Story 5. Blood in the Rotunda. For 15-year-old Kayla Reynolds, a sophomore at Northside High School in Jacksonville, North Carolina, the first weeks of the 2024 school year were a blur of new classes and nervous excitement. Northside was a sprawling campus, its fine arts hallway, a vibrant corner where choir kids like Kayla found their tribe. She loved chorus, the one place where her shy demeanor melted away, her voice blending with others in harmony. But on a crisp September morning, that sanctuary would become a crucible, testing her in ways she'd never imagined. Kayla arrived early, settling into her seat in the choir room at 6:55 a.m. The classroom, tucked at the end of the fine arts hall beside the auditorium, was quiet, the morning light filtering through high windows. She slipped in her earbuds, letting 3 days' grace drown out the world, her fingers tapping the desk. A few classmates trickled in, their chatter a low hum. Then her teacher, Ms. Alvarez, spoke sharply, her voice cutting through Kayla's music. Kayla pulled out her earbuds, blinking in confusion as her classmates hurried toward the closet at the back of the room. "We're in lockdown," Ms. Alvarez said, her tone clipped. "Into the closet now." Kayla followed, her heart thudding. They'd done a drill the day before, but something felt different. The urgency in Ms. Alvarez's eyes. The way she locked the door and killed the lights. The closet was cramped, the air thick with the scent of dust and nervous sweat. Kayla squeezed in beside her friend Jacob, the darkness swallowing them as the door shut. A sliver of light seeped under the frame, the only tether to the outside world. At first, Kayla thought it was another drill, but then police sirens wailed outside, their pitch rising. Her stomach dropped. This was real. She clutched her phone, its screen dimmed, and texted her mom, "Lockdown. I'm okay." The reply was instant. "Stay safe. I love you." Kayla tried to stay calm, focusing on her breathing, but the silence was oppressive. Her classmates were quiet, their fear palpable. Jacob whispered, "What's happening?" Kayla shook her head, unsure. The lockdown dragged on, nearly 2 hours of stifling darkness. Kayla's legs cramped, her mind racing with possibilities. A shooter, a bomb, something worse. Finally, the intercom crackled. "Lockdown lifted. Resume classes." Ms. Alvarez opened the closet, her face pale but composed. Kayla returned to her seat, slipping her earbuds back in. desperate for normalcy. But the atmosphere was charged, whispers spreading like wildfire. During a break, Kayla cornered Jacob. "Was it a fight?" she asked. His eyes were grim. "Worse, someone got stabbed in the rotunda." The rotunda was the school's heart, a circular hub where hallways converge. Kayla's breath caught. Violence like that didn't happen at Northside. She glanced out the window, seeing a snarl of cars and police vehicles clogging the lot. Parents were flooding the campus, their faces etched with panic. By midday, rumors solidified into horror. 2 students had been stabbed, one fatally. A teacher had been slashed trying to intervene. The attacker, a 16-year-old junior, had been arrested, charged with manslaughter and assault. 2 others, aged 15 and 16, faced lesser charges. Worst of all, a Snapchat video had surfaced, capturing the chaos. Screams, running feet, the glint of a blade. Kayla didn't watch it, but the knowledge of its existence sickened her. Her mom picked her up at the baseball field, where parents had gathered, their cars forming a chaotic line. Kayla collapsed into her arms, the weight of the day crashing down. They drove to her mom's daycare, where Kayla broke down, tears streaming as she processed the loss of a classmate she'd never known. The boy's name, released later, was Ethan, a quiet kid who loved skateboarding. His death left a void, a reminder of how fragile safety was. In the weeks that followed, Northside tightened security, but the scars remained. Kayla sang in choir, but the notes felt hollow. She scoured news reports, learning the attack might have been gang-related, a feud spilling into the school. The fear of retaliation lingered, a shadow over her sophomore year. Ethan's memorial, a small plaque in the rotunda, became a daily reminder. Life could change in an instant, and Northside would never be the same.